Minister LeBlanc, really nice of you to take the time to join us today.
Well, thanks for inviting me, Michael.
Listen, obviously this is a very friendly gathering. You and your colleagues are speaking to a friendly audience, being a Liberal convention, but it's hard to witness this without noting the fact that just down the road in the House of Commons, a very different atmosphere having to do with Conservative MP Michael Chong, very tough questions being asked of your government as to when they knew that Chinese authorities were targeting his family in Hong Kong. And Mr. Chong did point out that there seems to be this disconnect between the Prime Minister's National Security Advisor, what she says to him, and what the Prime Minister has told the House and told the media about not knowing of the targeting. What do you say about that whole issue right now?
So I've said the same thing I've said since the beginning of this conversation around foreign interference. It is a threat to Canadian democratic institutions. It has been for well over a decade, including when Mr. Poilievre himself was responsible for democratic institutions, a portfolio that I have now. The head of CSIS was identifying this as a growing challenge. The Conservative Party did absolutely nothing about it. And Mr. Poilievre said, well, of course they didn't do anything about it because it wouldn't be in the partisan advantage of the Conservatives to do anything about it 10 years ago. So I think we also have to discount some of the posing that takes place from Conservative MPs in question period. That being said, the allegations surrounding Mr. Chong and the increasingly aggressive tone from the government of China and other countries as well is clearly unacceptable. So Canadian intelligence services, national defense intelligence agencies, all of the public safety apparatus needs to continue to do everything it can and must do to protect Canadians, including, of course, Mr. Chong, but also to share information within the Government of Canada, because that is also a challenge, and the Prime Minister and I and Marco Mendicino have talked about this. We need to ensure that there's a much clearer directive to these intelligence agencies how and when to share information, including with the Prime Minister or the Minister responsible. So
you definitely say, without any type of hesitation, that you, the Prime Minister, senior members of government did not know that Michael Chong's family was being targeted.
So I can speak for myself. I learned about that when I saw it in media reports, and the Prime Minister has said the same thing. I can't speak for other ministers, but in terms of when the Prime Minister found out about it, certainly when I found out about it was in the media reports. And I recognize that that's a challenge if I'm the minister responsible for democratic institutions and a colleague and somebody I like. Michael Chong and I were in the same residence at University of Toronto 35 years ago. I've known and liked him for a long time. But it doesn't matter who the colleague is. That kind of conduct from a foreign government is completely unacceptable. We have taken this threat seriously. We will continue to evolve and strengthen our measures as the threat evolves and becomes more serious. It's not only China that's doing this. This is one egregious example. But we're very much aware of the challenge and working on it. But the 4,000 people, Michael, we're sitting at a Liberal convention where 4,000 people have paid out of their own pocket to come and participate in a conversation about policy, about planning for the next election, about what the government can do on a series of issues. Foreign interference, sure, that's a challenge. But the day and a half I've been walking around the convention and talking to people, they're talking about affordability, climate change, diversity and inclusion.
So you don't think national security will have an impact on a vote if and when that actually happens in terms of an issue that Canadians will be speaking about?
I didn't say that.
I'm just asking for clarity.
Well, but I don't. You and I don't know what the election ballot question will be 2 years from now. We probably wouldn't know what it would be 8 months from now. So is this a challenge for the government and for Canadians? Of course it is. Is the government taking it seriously? Absolutely. Are we going to strengthen our measures, including from the report that the Right Honourable David Johnston will make public in the coming weeks? Absolutely. But the people I talk to in New Brunswick when I'm at home on the weekend are talking about extreme weather events. They're talking about the price of snow crab. They're talking about the fishing harbors that need to be repaired after Hurricane Fiona. When I'm in Montreal on Monday, we'll be talking about investments in public transit and zero emissions vehicles. The government can do more than one thing at one particular moment. Mm-hmm. We're lucky that we can focus on a whole bunch of priorities, and we'll continue to do that.
Mm-hmm. Now, before you go, I do also want to talk a bit more. You've started it, but I do want to talk a bit more about this convention and the Liberals coming together. And I kind of wonder, because if and when the vote happens, the next vote happens, your party will be seeking a fourth mandate. Historically, not really given in this country. Most prime ministers, most governments see about 10 years before they are replaced. What argument will you be making to the Canadian people that this party deserves a fourth mandate?
Well, so the argument will be based on a track record of our government focusing on problems that matter to Canadians, delivering for Canadians. Elections are also about real choices. So when people go to vote, none of the above isn't on the ballot, and some sort of utopian view of what might be perfect won't be there either. It'll be real choices between real leaders and real policies, and those choices have real consequences. So when people go to vote, they'll see a Liberal Party and a Liberal government with a track record of accomplishment, with ideas that we think will be the best ones to tackle the problems that the country will be facing in 2 years, based on the work that we've done and want to continue to do. The Prime Minister, when he spoke last night, made it clear to the delegates here at the convention, as he does to us in caucus and in cabinet, that we have a lot of important work to do in front of us. So we're not trying to run a government looking in the rearview mirror. That's not, if you spend your whole time driving your car looking in the rearview mirror, you'll probably have an accident. So you need to look out through the windshield. That's what we're doing as a government, and we'll continue to do that work, and then we'll let Canadians judge. I'm very serene about that. The partisan theatrics of the House of Commons, the manufactured indignation, you've been around political journalism for a long time. There's not a direct line between sort of the Academy Award for the greatest manufactured indignation and some election victory months or years from that moment. That's not a straight line. I've been an opposition MP as well. 2 + 2 doesn't have to equal 4. You're not responsible for what you said last week. Every good idea you're in favor of, every bad idea you're against. Nobody ever adds the 2 up. So that's part of a partisan context and an adversarial political process. But I think Canadians are thoughtful people that are interested in what governments are doing about things that matter in their lives. And if that's the questions they're asking, I think we should be quite optimistic.
Dominic LeBlanc, really appreciate the time. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Michael.